Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Go for a Walk. So today we are going to be talking about a detection specific topic. Now, talk about a lot of pet stuff on here, pet dog stuff here, but I train a lot of detection and search and rescue dogs. And I think that this topic is really important because I find that it is a common kind of issue with, a lot of handlers or trainers who maybe have been not doing it for very long, but even some who have. But the topic specifically is why it is so important to mix up your training. And by mix up your training, I am talking specifically about the nature of your hides. So a lot of times when people are training a detection dog, obviously we start out really simple, right? The dog, it should be easy for the dog to find. You got to set them up for success, have to imprint, all that good stuff. But part of the issue is we build complexity to a point, but then we kind of stagnate. And by stagnate, I'm talking about we're always training in the same places. We've got them kind of on a rotation. Our hides, we're maybe recycling the same exact target odors repeatedly. And we're not messing with our target odors because we're like, well, if my dog can find it, like this, in its kind of pure state, obviously it'll be able to find it anywhere. That is not true. If dogs do not get used to searching in a lot of different environments, they're not going to be able to work through all those distractors. I mean, sure, maybe you've got the unicorn dog who will, but most of them, they're animals. They are programmed to get distracted by things like other dog smells and wild animal smells and all these other things that that all dogs look for. So obviously, we select these high drive, highly motivated dogs for detection, but they're going to be motivated by other things too. And so we have to prepare them for that. The other thing is, in a real world setting, in most disciplines, whether you're in narcotics or explosives or human remains, these hides are not clean. They're not sitting out there easy to find. They're not just maybe, in a drawer with a drawer 1 centimeter open. It just does not work like that. And so obviously you have to build your dog up to being able to do those things, but then you have to be able to build your dog up so they can work past them. So here are some things that I like to try to do with my hides to make them a little more realistic and to help dogs understand how to work through more complex odor pictures. First thing is, I try to train in as many places as possible. I go out there on social media in my local community and I'm like, hey, got this detection dog, blah, blah, train detection dogs. Does anybody know of anywhere who might be willing to let us run dogs once in a while? Right? I have made some brilliant connections that way. Another thing is, going out when you're driving around, if you see somewhere, you're like, that looks like a good place to train, right? Track down the owner. We've got Google Maps these days. You can find anything. Call them. You can work around any limitations that they have. They're like, hey, that's fine, but only searching this area or whatever because it's too dangerous over here. Just be respectful. Do what they tell you, but it will get you into more environments. And that is so imperative. So another thing that you can do is, you're going somewhere, right? Like, I don't know, gas station, which is always my default for these things, or the grocery store. Maybe bring a hide or run a blank, and go put it somewhere that's safe, right? Where there's a lot of traffic and, trash smells and all these other distractors, and just run your dog on short drills. So easy to do, but we just don't think about it. So apart from environment, another thing that I like to do is mess with the complexity of the hide. right? Stress for these dogs is a good thing because we can't just set them up for success, right? Errorless learning in their training all the time where we're like, okay, we have to make sure the dog can find it so they get reinforced for it. And then every time they go to a deployment, it's like, hey, you know, this is actually really, really hard. And there's probably nothing here. That's unrealistic. And dogs are smart. Like, they know the difference. So you want to train, you want to make things difficult. So, like, don't just drop something out there, run the dog on it and call it a day. You know, if your dog can do that fluently, start putting it inside of things, making it inaccessible, changing the... Hi. You know we're talking about this. Come on. Changing the elevation of the hide. So it's high up or on a door or, you know, above a door frame or on a roof. Obviously, you want to work through these things systematically. You don't just want to go from 0 to 100, but you need to be able to work up to them, right? Another thing is putting the hide inside other things. You know, putting distractor odors around in your environment. Like, you know, my HRD dog, I've got, you know, I have good friends who bring me things like roadkill that are stored in a not biohazard like fashion. But I will use those, or if I find roadkill, you know, out somewhere in the woods, I'll bring my dog back and work them around it. Like, you know, because human remains detection, you always want to make sure to proof your dog off the animal remains anyways. But it gets them used to kind of working through that, working contaminated environments, right? If you're working a drug dog, like, work your dog in ways that, you know, you see people hiding this stuff, actually hide it. So they're not going to just leave it out in the open, right? They might have it like locked in a hidden area in the house, or you're going to be inside a wall, or like, you know, it's buried outside somewhere, or, you know, in suitcases under a bunch of other things that also smell. Just make it realistic. That is so important, because otherwise your dog is not set up for success. You know, the last thing that I would suggest is proof. Because dogs are animals and they like to smell novel things. So they will meander around. And yeah, even if they're working, they're going to take a little bit of a break once in a while. Like, oh, what's this? I haven't smelled it before. It's really, really important that your dog is proofed off of as many things as possible. So, it's all over the place today. But, you know, like there's a list somewhere, but it includes things, you know, this is some research that was done. It includes things like toothpaste, for instance. You know, nobody thinks like, let's proof our dog up for this, or, you know, cleaning products, right? Come on, cleaning products are good. I mean, things that have novel odor, food smells, right? The trash, just whatever, like dog urine is a good one, because all the dogs will be like, oh, if they don't get to work around dog urine, they will usually stop and at least acknowledge the fact that it's there. So just proof. You don't need to have all this stuff in your house, but go places where it is already located within the environment and work your dog. Now, if you've only been working in sterile environments, or like working the same kinds of hides over and over, you cannot think that you're going to be able to take your dog to a new place, you know, that's like a dog boarding facility with dog urine all over the premises, and you're going to be able to take, you know, half a gram of whatever you've got, and, you know, mix it in with a bunch of coffee beans and put it in a bag and put the bag in a cabinet, right? Because your dog's gonna be like, oh, you know, there's just a lot more salient influences in the environment, but work up to it. And don't be afraid if your dog does not find stuff once in a while. It just shows you what you need to work on, right? we are human. We are not perfect. Our dogs are also living things, and they are not perfect, and they're not machines. And, you know, just because they miss something doesn't mean they can't smell it, but maybe they just don't recognize it in that odor picture. The last thing that I will say about this is really try to work your dog on as many training aids as possible. Because even if it's the same training aids. So for instance, if you run maybe conservation's not the best example of this, but say you do. Say you run a conservation dog and you're working some kind of scat, right? And you have had this scat for 6 months and it's the only scat your dog has run on. You need to expose your dog to more of the odor picture, because there's a lot of dogs who don't generalize, look, just like bang, you know, and they understand, hey, just because I smelled it this way means like that all the time. But our training aids decompose, all of them. That just is something that happens with age. You want to get newer training aids. The stuff that we store our training aids in has its own smell. And you know that these things are off-gassing. They're contaminating your odors, right? I mean, so you want to make sure that you are either using, you know, other people who also do the same detection discipline as you. So especially if you're in law enforcement, like go to other departments, try to build a relationship with them so you can go train with them. I mean, you know, be creative and try to get your dog, go to seminars, like try to get your dog on as many different, you know, odors that are the same but different as the ones that you have. That is really, really important. The last thing that I will say after I get under this tree is always make sure to proof off of your containers. So if you keep your stuff in glass jars, you need to proof off of the same glass jars. If you keep your stuff in a freezer, you want to proof off of glass jars that have been in that freezer. If you keep your stuff in bags, plastic jars, whatever it is, gloves that you use, proof your dog off of all of it. It's really important. All right. Well, I will stop there for today. So I hope you enjoyed what you heard and saw. If you would like to see more of our content, please like and subscribe to this channel. Thank you so much and have a good day.